podcast. You are the co-founder of Maple Billing, which I'm very excited to get into, learn more about. Also very excited to just get inside your head, learn more
Yeah.
about how you think about building startups, building teams, and all the good stuff. But thank you for being here. I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm just so eager to get into it. It's going to be awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, Ruchi, I think a little bit of context is probably helpful here for the audience. You were a senior director of engineering at Dropbox, an amazing organization, an amazing company, and for a while there, you were leading a team of over 200 folks under your org. No Mickey Mouse operation whatsoever. And you have now founded Maple Billing. Billing is obviously every SaaS company's, heartbeat, but it seems or it feels like these days the stack is sort of a mishmash, a Frankenstein of tools. Can you give us a little bit of the background on going from Dropbox to Maple Billing and what's the 1 minute Maple pitch?
Yeah, no, that definitely. I think you're spot on to sort of call out that billing is certainly the heartbeat for the company. It's the line to cash flow, it's the line to survival, and it's like the line for growth. And it's also one of the least sexiest parts of the business, right? Like it is grunge, it is grind, it's a lot of threading of manual workflows. There's a lot of tools that exist for each part of the stack, especially because billing is a very multifunctional job. It is not just your product, your engineering stack. It is also sales led contracts. It's from your CRM. It's from, your accounting team, your finance team. Everyone has a hand and a role to play in the whole workflow. And it's so critical for the business to get it right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so in terms of just like I would say the one minute pitch, like Maple is intended to be your entire accounts receivable stack, serving the needs of each one of those stakeholders in the process. So right from your PLG motions, where product and engineering have to think about pricing, packaging, usage-based billing, certainly in the AI-driven world now. Um, Prepaid credit, seats, like all the different nuances that SaaS billing has built over decades. And then that being threaded in a zone where your ops teams, your finance teams can keep tabs on invoices and the relationships with your customers. And then certainly the sales led motion tends to bring in a whole different dimension to the equation because then you have a team that is not in the weeds of the product all day, every day, having to now make the pitch for the product, sell it, and also manage those customer relationships with the insights around their billing statuses. So there's multi-threaded system that needs to come together to make it work well.
Gotcha. That's very helpful. And it's interesting. I feel like I've had a conversation with you in the past where, you were briefly talking about your time at Dropbox, obviously very fondly. But you were talking a little bit about how like billing was fragmented, and maybe a part of the impetus for starting this and then tag along the fact that your business partner, your co-founder, as well as your partner in life, Aswin, is a very talented individual who was, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the founding engineers at Rippling.
Yep, that's right.
So there was the right recipe here, I guess, to get going.
Yeah,
Fair to say.
yeah, no, we've definitely both lived and breathed these sort of, pricing, packaging, infrastructure around this sort of equation, right? Because from Dropbox, Dropbox is a single product that got sold in multiple ways. It was sales led, it was teams, it was self-serve teams, there was a reseller and a channel motion. You could think of any sales motion and like Dropbox had it. And that meant multivariate billing across different components, and then also just the sheer infrastructure to support these unique scenarios where you'd have freelancer or solopreneurs or any kind of sort of setup on the billing infrastructure side. And that would take quarters on end to get out the door because you're messing with a core system that now needs to be so flexible to support all these things. And these are systems that were built in house, and certainly we didn't have the luxury of like really highly available software being available at the time that Dropbox was scaling to, millions and nearly billion of users, right? So that sort of piecing that and living the sort of manual workflows that happened there. And then with my partner Ashwin, like he was there from day one of Rippling and having to sort of evaluate solutions that would work well again with efficiency across the sales led motion, across the engineering and product self-serve capabilities. The evaluation of tools at that time were big pieces of software, the Zoras of the world, where you would literally have to hop on a call with an implementation person, pay through the nose on implementation fees, and still not have the self-serve capability to really move fast and iterate on pricing at the speed that you need to, especially in those early days. And so both of us having sort of lived these sets of problems across, two very like key players in the SaaS space, was a lot of insights for us to sort of put on the table and get going.
Amazing. That's great. Can you talk a little bit more about this Swiss Army knife of pricing, you know what I mean, as it relates to Maple billing, seat based usage, credits, hybrid. How do you guys think about that, for
Yeah.
your customers?
No, for sure. I think this is something that we continue to evolve as we talk to our customers and prospects every day. There's always a new billing model that we hear of. It's sort of in our pride to just continue to, you know, solve for that really 90% tail end of the use cases, because that's what makes it tends to be an all or nothing system for it to be efficient, right? So being able to handle the kind of complexity that a sales person could put on a contract while still being understandable to the customer, with that fine line and balance of making sure that there's value on that's not left on the table. And so that comes with obviously the old school traditional model of seat based billing. Funnily enough, like telecom companies had the nuance of usage-based billing. No, you were counting minutes. You knew exactly how many phone calls were made, and it's sort of found its way into SaaS now with all of this AI capabilities and tracking, because simply the cost structure to support an AI model and have that running in your infrastructure needs to be sort of tracked with tracked for unit economics. Otherwise, the traditional 80% margins that you would get out of SaaS aren't quite there with these AI models. The hope is that cost goes down and we can get back to that kind of margin. But certainly the value add of like these usage based models, and certainly prepaid credits becoming also more common so that you can protect your costs upfront is something that a lot of AI companies are leaning towards. But there's still a lot of traditional use cases of seat-based billing where, existing giants like a Slack or Google are continuing to sort of push on that model, even though they, unfurl AI capabilities alongside their traditional seat models. So it's very interesting to watch the evolution. And, we're also getting into a world where with AI, there's a lot of focused on something called outcomes-based pricing. So you only pay for things that are, satisfactory from a customer standpoint. It's very much a case to solve for in like support AI, right? Like this is something that's evolving a lot, especially with support AI tools. And it's essentially until the customer is happy, that value add doesn't kick in. And so it really forces the dynamics of making sure that the model is doing what it's supposed to. The incentive structures are aligned on both sides for the outcome to be valuable, right? So yeah.
It's interesting because billing, you know, is this, I feel like is this space or gets this rap that it can be boring or, there's one or two ways to do things. And the way you talk about it with excitement as it relates also to like the times today where there is innovation around
Yep.
pricing and you guys
Yep.
are at the forefront of it and providing founders and your customers with the optionality of different ways to go about this, I think is really cool, really innovative, and in a low lift manner for your customers, I think is a huge value add.
Yeah. Yeah, we absolutely want our customers to be focused on their products, their value prop to their customers, and like leave the mess and the complexity of billing that exists today with the ability to have this flexibility at their fingertips all to us and really focus on the core of their business.
Very cool. So, Ruchi, where does this go moving forward? You've been building this now for a little bit. I mean, I know you personally. You're very talented. You're very ambitious. Where does this go? Where do you guys intend to take this? Where do you want to take this?
No, for sure. I think, there's so many directions we could be headed. Like, I think, AR is one, like accounts receivables being one piece of the puzzle when it comes to like sort of critical business infrastructure for SaaS companies, for even just service-based companies. Like, it's really, really important, even more so in their case for cash flow.
Are you selling me right now?
Oh, well, sure, why not?
You might be organically, right?
You absolutely could be using us. No, I would love that. Let's chat after. No, but like I think, just seeing where Stripe as a business of its own, has sort of evolved right from payments and moving up the stack. I think there's a lot of value add in the chain above and, below the billing stack, right? So all the way from being the touch point from a CRM, so, really being at the forefront of the customer relationship, that triggering billing, quoting, all of the proposal management that your company goes through. But then there's a lot that happens downstream from there. There's tax management, there's payment processing, there is accounting platforms, and all the different sort of systems that need to feed off of now this critical accounts receivable information, like forecasting, FP&A. So these are sort of all the threads that we work with, and we've been able to establish like really strong partnerships with key players in these spaces because we essentially are top of funnel for them, right? Because
Mhm.
they want to continue to either support their existing customers in a manner that is more full featured so their stickiness improves. Like for example, if an FP&A product wants to solve really great forecasting for their customer, they have to work hard to get their billing in order for their tool to have a ton of value to the customer. And then if that relationship is strong and the integration with our platform is that makes their product even more sticky because it's really
Mhm.
producing a lot more value for the customer than it would on its own, or you're sort of spending a lot of the uplift to get that data in order just before they even get to the point of logging into your product. So those partners tend to be really key. And so I think obviously our razor focus today is just really nail down the accounts receivables problem to the T. Like there's a lot of evolution that's happening here. There's a lot of capabilities that people, sort of continue to push on and ask for. But then I think we could easily see sort of our growth in partnerships across these sort of dimensions, whether it's, tax management, whether it's payment processing or accounting platforms. So that's sort of
Amazing.
where we see ourselves going. Yep.
Very, very exciting. So, Ruchi, I think I read somewhere on the Maple Billing website that you don't take a percent of revenue. How does Maple make money? Why was that pricing philosophy essentially non-negotiable?
Yeah, no, that's a super key question. And I think it really goes down to the essence of what we're trying to achieve, which is consolidation of your revenue systems, right? So the idea that you have to think twice about putting your self-serve, subscription on the platform and not your sales led deals because, Stripe or any other player in the space is going to take 1.5, 2%, depending on the sets of features that you've enabled in the platform. Like it should be a no brainer for you to want to bring all of your accounts receivable data in one place. And it shouldn't be driven by the math of, well, oh, Stripe's going to eat X% of my deal because it's going to spin up one invoice and it's going to cost me hundreds of dollars just for that one invoice to be spun up. So that's like a key barrier to a lot of people, a lot of prospects we spoke to initially. It's like, I would never use Stripe because I don't want to pay that percent. So, and that is the key problem that ends up happening with accounts receivable being strewn across the stack in the company is that obviously there's workflow issues where each organization is siloed. They have their own building blocks. They want to manage their part of the world cleanly. But then there's also this barrier in addition. Like solving the workflow one is hard enough, and then you need to overcome the pricing model as well. So that's one key decision we thought was absolutely non-negotiable. And in terms of the pricing model, I think, billing is an operational piece of software for the company. Like it does not deserve a percentage of your growth, especially if it is the back office job of all the hard work that went into closing the deal in the first place. So why should an invoice being spun up take a cut of your growth altogether? It should be resilient, it should be efficient, it should be reliable, and obviously should scale with the cost of running for us as well, like the cost of running billing for your company. And so it doesn't matter if it's a $5 subscription or $1 million invoice. The work to create an invoice or work to manage a subscription didn't quite change. So why should that cost go to you in an inordinate fashion?
My bet is that that is something that resonates with founders, with your customers, and I think that's fantastic. And you talked a little bit about, non-negotiables. I think you and I can both agree that great people is a non-negotiable as it relates to building a business, building an amazing team that is trying to change something fundamental in an industry, which you guys are. So let's chat a little bit about building teams. I mentioned earlier in the conversation, you've overseen a 200-person engineering org. You've probably seen a ton. You've probably hired a ton, worked with different characters, and now it's a handful of you guys building this business. Smaller organization. I bet a part of that is humbling and extremely exciting.
Yeah.
But what was that like, that transition from a large team to assembling a founding team here? Maybe fill me in.
No, for sure. I think talent is always sort of that, again, the lifeblood of the company, right? Whether it's at a 200 people org scale where, you know, people really remember jobs for the relationships that they had. The comp is almost always the last equation that they're trying to balance. And so for creating environments that people really want to feel attached to, excited to, or they're constantly thinking about what they want to be doing at work the next day, it's all driven by the people relationships that they're able to establish. And so certainly a key part of that is like feeling included, feeling trusted right from day one. And certainly like my philosophy around this has been to sort of assume a default position of trust and then rule by exception, right? So that's something that has always worked super well, certainly works phenomenally at scale, right? Where you do have more capacity to take bets and flyers and really groom talent that, for example, have non-traditional backgrounds, have grit and sort of proactiveness baked into their behavior and their nature, that you can tend to groom this sort of talent. I would say with startups, it's almost similar in the sense that yes, like the first few hires, you are anchoring a lot on grit and resilience because you're constantly shifting directions, you're constantly changing priorities, and it's almost better to be a generalist in that early stage because you're filling in the gaps of the founder or the gaps of the role, like water. It's like somebody who's on support and implementation, is going to have to also pick the support software, also write help center articles. Their goal is not to just simply answer tickets on an email or pick up the phone, right? So it is about making the role your own. And sure, you might have, competencies and some skills, but that flowing like water nature happens purely by the ability to, take on more and the eagerness to want to take on more. And that's very, personal. It's a very characteristic trait of a person, as opposed to skill that's been developed over time.
You know, it's interesting. I want to double down on what you mentioned there. Default, I trust you to your team. There's a book I read a little while back called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And he talks about when you're building a high performance culture, high performance team, the people on the team need to feel safe. Safe as in they can freely do their best work. They can freely agree and disagree with their team members without fear that they're going to be fired or they're going to be let go or ostracized or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
absolutely.
And I feel like you giving your team, your people the nod that, hey, I trust you. Let's do this. Let's fail together. Let's succeed together. And let's, what was the words you used? Like walk on water together. I don't think that's what you
Yeah,
said,
no, I mean, it's
but
just like fill in the voids, right? Like there's
it's just a
always,
way of doing things.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
Yeah,
It's a vibe in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Is there a metric or ritual that signals you're right? When you say to someone, hey, I trust you, prove me right. Is there something that pops up and you're like, yeah,
I
damn, this
mean,
person's
yeah,
amazing?
like on a day-to-day basis, of course, like with an end count, of 10 right now, right? Like the signals, the metrics are such like really high bandwidth conversations. And to your point, like there's that sense of safety, that's a sense of security. And then of course at the scaled organizations, you're doing things like pulse reports and all of these more like nuanced signals. But I think at the core of it is really the question of, I want to stay and do I feel like I get to do my best work here? And if those answers do not come back as yes, like no other metric is going to matter. And so for me, especially even while at Dropbox, like those were the major ones. And it's like, okay, then you have all the other stuff around retention or DEI initiatives or what have you. It's like none of that matters if those two questions don't come back as yes, like a resonating yes. And you have bigger problems to fix before that happens.
It's interesting because in this age of AI, as roles are, I would say, largely adapting, they're
Yeah.
changing. There's an evolution to them. If there's trust amongst your team members, in theory, it means your team members feel like they can be vulnerable, like they can make mistakes. And I think that in a world of AI where things are changing very fast and people need to, throw old ways of doing things out the window and try new things, I think that's extremely important. There's actually someone who I had on the podcast a little bit ago. His name's OG. He was the chief product officer at Calendly. He used the term, you got to pretend like you're doing tap dance. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in order to do tap dance, you need to feel trusted. You need to feel like you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
No,
there's an
absolutely.
analogy for you.
No, totally. I think the adoption of AI is like one of the biggest experiments in like human history, like as far as I can think back, right? It's like and like without the default sort of trust position of where you're giving employees sort of this green space to, try tools, figure out what parts of their workflows, are worth automating, are valued automating without this fear of like, well, is if the AI does X, my job's gone, is at stake. Sort of creating a sense of security around that is definitely, super key for us to find the right mix of tools and humans in the loop, right? I mean, I am sort of keeping on top of like the agentic workflows that a lot of people continue to build on, but I think it's still a ways out to replacing supercharging humans with the power of AI. At least that's my stance on it, right? Because it is something that, for example, on a support call or on just relationship building, on sales, people are really eager to have that human connection. It's less so about, did you give me the exact correct answer? Did you solve my problem to the T? It's like, I enjoyed talking with you. And that's what people really take away. That's like the key to sales. People believe who you are, what you stand for, and all of that. And so to create environments where you still keep a lot of that human element in the mix is something that I certainly believe is going to be a long time before people are going to have the same kinds of relationships with an AI agent on the other end. I mean, I'm optimistic, very bullish, but it's also something that I'm like, I don't know if I would sort of be in that zone. of having that kind of conversation with an agent.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know, but coming out of COVID, and this isn't quite the right analogy, but even when you're dealing with humans,
Yeah.
virtually, or AI agents virtually, there's something different than when you're speaking to a human one on one. And, if you lean into that in person, there's an empathy level, there's, body language, there are different things that just humans get from each other. But I do think, I mean, we're seeing team sizes are smaller. We are seeing roles change and adapt and evolve. What we're also seeing is that the people that startups hire early on, they've always been literally critical. They're even that much more critical. If an amazing individual back then could take on the work of, 3 or 4 people, today could take on the work potentially of 8 or 9 or 10 or 20. So I think that's just a nod to early on how critical it is to getting it right and to bring on people that you want to go to battle with, that are willing to go to the end of the world to get the job done, wear multiple hats, and just have this energy and way of elevating everybody else around them.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think, there is a category of work that, AI would certainly do a lot more accurately, manual tasks, menial kind of work, data entry. Like these are kinds of things that one, don't help humans sort of push the needle on their own creativity and innovation. So these are tools that are designed to like free up our mind and space for higher order, strategy, right? But then of course, like that eliminates a whole category of work that, companies that employees are banking on, to get food on the table, right? So it has certainly been interesting to watch that evolution. And you're right, team sizes are getting smaller. Companies are getting, more efficient. They're watching their burn more closely. So I think there are certainly going to be some really good elements that come out of it, but equally also difficult problems for humanity to solve. Because like, how do we sustain, an incoming population of really bright students and entry level positions that help us groom talent for the future. Honestly, without people interactions, like it was to your point, bad enough during COVID where new grads were, stuck in their apartments without sort of this real time live environment to where learning is happening at nearly like X the pace that you would on a Zoom call. So how is AI going to help or be a detriment to those sorts of learning and high bandwidth sort of growth opportunities for people coming right out of college? So it is certainly something that is, really, really interesting to watch, but also, equally worrisome, but also positive.
Sure. No, I agree with that. I mean, I'm not sure society at large understands or is aware of how much change we may see here in the short, mid, long term, in the next little while, and a lot of amazing and I think positive change, and also potentially some change that in hindsight will say, crap, that wasn't very good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so yeah, I'm with you. So Ruchi, you've built teams, you're an entrepreneur yourself, been a key part of one of the most successful technology stories of the past couple decades in Dropbox. You also are a mentor, a coach to other founders. You angel invest in other startups. How did you get into that? Maybe fill me in a little bit there.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think, the organic approach to coaching and even the angel investments really did come from the relationships that I built at Dropbox and at work every day. And again, going back to that very key point of, do people feel trusted? Do they feel like they have an environment where they're constantly learning, constantly growing, and have a lot of that high bandwidth interaction with other people? And that's really led to the sort of growth on the coaching and angel investing for me. Like, so my investments do tend to be people that I have like spent a bunch of time with. And obviously, as a founder and entrepreneur, like we're constantly meeting and building more relationships with prospects, with customers. And there are so many amazing individuals that we get to connect with almost every day, right? Where it's just forget like just the sales portion of the role. It's like genuinely connecting with such amazingly talented people who see your vision, who see who you are, and see your background, your story, your grit, right? That is like a lot of where the key relationships, even just for coaching or angel investing, have come from for me. As a coach, I think a lot of it is like stems from just building and managing talent at Dropbox and at scale, and like helping other leaders sort of navigate the complexity, navigate, sort of where to be vulnerable, where to not be, how to sort of be a great leader, managing upwards, managing downwards, managing sideways, and building key relationships and continuing to evolve their sort of growth within the organization. And then certainly there's the coaching dimension on the founder side, which is like not to be attached to stuff, to build stuff and be ready to throw it out the window the next day you have more high bandwidth information about what you're trying to build. So it's a lot about, again, those personal relationships translating into opportunities on both sides.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Typically, when we start helping, these are early stage tech startups, and we've been largely lucky and fortunate, to be honest with you, that some of these companies have grown a ton and scaled, and we've built meaningful value add on both sides, relationships with many of the folks on these teams. On
No, absolutely.
Ruchi, building Maple, a team of 10 is, coaching other startups, investing in some. Is there a specific blind spot that you might see often for an early team, and how might they fix it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, some of the key, tendencies are like, especially when founders are builders, right? Where a lot of their skill, their depth of knowledge really lies. And this includes us as well, right? Like we ourselves are engineers and product folks by trade. And so we totally empathize with the drive to like, get that dopamine hit from when we ship something, when we build something with our own hands, when we work with other engineers and solve really complex technical problems. So that really juices up sort of the mind and energy. But it's like the ultimate sort of validation: is somebody going to derive value from the product? Are they going to pay for this? And it might not be that very direct equation, but certainly is like, is this providing value? And the initial intent to be like, well, I'm a builder, I'm going to build and then I'm going to have somebody sell it for me. There's no circumventing the founder-led sale capability. And that means willingness to overcome just your inhibitions around having conversations with a lot of people you've never talked to before, going out there and networking, going out there and posting on LinkedIn. It's not something I was programmed to do every day. And, when you see how much validation it brings in terms of obviously your customers interacting with you day to day on surfaces that they use every day, right? Like it's about being present where they are and having the sets of conversations that they want to have, even though it means for you to like get out of bed and be like, okay, I got to do this, right? Like there's no solution to the grit that's needed on the customer side, on the need to validate and constantly build for the person that is going to derive value from the product. And that is something that a lot of early stage founders, and we often get wrong on the balance of that. We kick ourselves for not doing that. And it's not something that's just like preached and taught. It's like you have to operate and live that every day to truly influence somebody else to know and realize that that's important to do, right?
It's almost like calling attention to, you are iterating, you got to constantly be measuring against what value it is that what you're building is generating for your customers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if it's not creating value, something needs to change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all fine and dandy to build,
Yep.
but is what you're building,
Yeah. Like build and
thriving?
they
How do
will come does not work, right?
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
is something that, builder mindsets need to explicitly overcome in their world to do it. And certainly like the flip side is also true, right? Like the grit to build needs to be there as well. Like you might be great at interacting with customers, great at getting their attention, great at, claiming to solve a key problem for them, but that needs to be backed up with execution. So the flip side happens
Mhm.
equally as well, right? Where you overpromise and underdeliver, but the delivery is really where it takes a lot of the grit, a lot of the hard work, a lot of the thinking of edges and sort of the nuance of where complex problems emerge. And until you solve the gnarly bit of the problem, it's not producing enough value over maybe an existing solution for the customer or the workflow that they hate when they come to work every day. So it does mean having the equal amount of grit to go fix something as much as it is to, sell and pitch the customer on the problem space.
So, so Ruchi, mm, billing may feel sort of legacy,
Yep.
if I dare I say. You know
No,
what I
it
mean?
is. Like, I don't think we're hiding from it. It is absolute grunge, right?
I love that. I love the transparency. But like obviously AI is moving a million miles a minute. It's reshaping the space fast. Are you using ML, AI, ML for anomaly detection? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah.
Predictive pricing? Fill me in.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's just so many ways in which AI can touch this world of finance and billing and the logistics and the manual workflows around it. I think there's lots of dimensions we've considered and are building portions of AI. One is certainly like the ability to pull in billing information from like any data source. The other is really around making sure invoices and stuff get reconciled against your bank, right? Like there's so many dimensions to when a deposit reaches your bank to when something is marked as done. So capturing that complexity is another piece. And then certainly pricing strategy is a big one, right? Where now that we have this wealth of data around your revenue, the workflows, who's paying for what and at what frequency and especially with usage, like what does their usage look like? What can it be predicted to be? These are all amazing insights for AI to help you think about pricing more creatively in your product. So it's certainly something that we intend to incorporate and get further on in our roadmap.
So if I try to distill this down a little bit, I mean, a customer of yours is using Maple Billing for their receivables and everything to do with receivables. You start to amass this plethora of individual data around that customer and call it like a small model. And AI knows that customer well, and the customer can reap the benefits of smart recommendations, I imagine, smart pricing optionality. Like there's so much that, that might have taken hours and hours of planning and strategic thinking of a human to do, and now could be done by AI,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, pricing strategy and roadmaps, at especially Dropbox sized companies, were like a year long, 6 month plus long exercise, right? Where you've like looked at cohorts and cohorts of users. What have they signed up for? What are the capabilities they're using? You're pulling out reports from Salesforce, from your product infrastructure, all of that just to piece like what the next pricing plan iteration should be in a zone where you're not making your existing customers unhappy, but also making it approachable for the next cohort of users. And that is such a complex problem that like inexperience has taken 9+ months to ship, right? Where there's so much evaluation happening before that switch is flipped, right?
Is there anything that scares finance leaders or founders or customers today as it relates to AI weaving into and with AR and pricing? Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say finance leaders and operations leaders are probably going to be some of the last adopters of AI. It's certainly because their role is about being correct. It's about being to the T on the math. With sales, with marketing, with learning, there's so much fuzziness that you can get away with. But when it comes to billing a customer, it is the absolute definition of the truth relationship that you have with them, right? If you bill the customer incorrectly, they lose an ounce of trust against you.
Reality's in the math, and the AI's got to get the math right.
Exactly. It has got to be correct. So even finance leaders who have adopted AI to some extent, they still have a human in the loop because they do need somebody to be accountable for that sign off on the number that went out. It could be wrong. And trust me, probably AI does a better job, eventually or even now to get that number correct. But again, it goes back to that human connection. If that invoice is wrong and the customer talks to a human to rectify it versus an AI agent answering them as to why it was wrong, guess who they're going to believe, right? It is just one of those places where when money is exchanging hands, when dollars are being passed along, there just has to be correctness in the system, or at least perceived correctness in the
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
And perception happens with a human in the loop. And so that's something that we talk to prospects about every day. We talk to our customers every day, and there's definitely huge opportunities to bring in, like I said, AI for some of the manual tasks that we shouldn't be spending human brain cells on. But it certainly is the buck stops with a human at the end of the day. And so I don't think we're past that yet. I'm optimistic, but it's going to be a while before that happens.
Ruchi, that's fascinating. It's definitely is a brave new world I think that we're entering as it relates to many or all industries, finance, billing, RevOps being
Yeah.
one of them. And not to put you on on the spot here, but in 5 years, the phrase finance stack will be replaced by what in your mind?
I mean, in my mind, ideally Maple, right? It's like people are thinking about Maple as the default deployment, but okay, that's wishful thinking for sure. But I think actually it'll be the power for companies to just build AI applications for themselves, right? Like every business has such nuanced needs that are very specific to them. And like no thing other than AI is going to be able to solve for that absolute custom need. So I think in 5 years, most companies will have at least baseline infrastructure to spin up AI apps that solve these workflows, that glue organizations together, that glue data flows together. But yeah, I think that's going to be the power in their hands.
Very exciting. Ruchi, I really appreciate having you on the podcast. This was so much fun.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
let's catch up soon.